I was always sort of quite popular, like growing up, and I was sort of like a loud, cocky, kind of charismatic kid, which sort of like tends to draw people to you. And I grew up in a household that always had like razor sharp British comedy on. So I was raised on Dad's Army, Only Fools and Horses, the British Empire, Are You Being Served? So laughter was always a thing in Pearson Towers, which I think is always super important. I think TV gets a bum rap. I think certainly it did in like the late 80s, early 90s. I'm like, oh, don't let your kids watch too much TV, it'll turn their eyes square and make them dumber. And like, no, it won't. It'll teach them about long form storytelling and empathy, which I think we all need more of, certainly now. Neurofibromatosis type 1, or NF1 for short, is a genetic condition that sits on the 17th chromosome of the human genome. 50% of cases are hereditary, as in passed down from one or both parents, and the other 50 are spontaneous mutations, which is the category I fall into, where it sort of just happens, to put it rather bluntly. And it causes excess muscle tissue to grow on nerve endings. So in the same way that electric cables are wrapped in plastic, our nerves are wrapped in cells called Schwann cells. And the condition causes those cells to just multiply exponentially, causing non-cancerous tumours called fibromas to grow. And they can occur anywhere on the human body. It just happens that most of mine are on my face. I've got like one under my arm here. I've got a little one on my hand there. And I got one on my butt that a court order says I am not allowed to show people. So when I was 5, I was messing around in my room, pretending to be Hulk Hogan. Of course, knowing what I know now, I'd pretend to be a different wrestler. But at the time, we didn't know what we know. And kind of bumped my head on the windowsill. Parents heard their wonderful firstborn crying, came in, checked the windowsill, checked the child. And it came up in a bump as it was, and we put ice on it, it went down. And then about 2 weeks later, I did it again, because Adam Pearson, fast learner, and this time the bump didn't go down. And so then we started asking kind of questions, going to doctors, and eventually, when I was 5, so 1990, got the NF1 diagnosis. And diagnostic medicine, and in particular genetics, in the 90s was nowhere near what it is now. Genetics is just this phenomenon that moves so quickly that I've always got to kind of keep up on it, because what you learned 2 years ago is just remarkably out of date now in some instances. So my diagnosis consisted of a incredibly surly, smug GP reading a definition from a medical textbook and then patting my mum on the hand. And I don't know how she didn't headbutt him. To this day, I still don't know how she restrained herself. Proud of your mum. And then you eventually find your way to Great Ormond Street, and then end up getting kind of what I would contend is the best paediatric care on the planet. And then I've always been fortunate growing up and transitioning from paediatric care to adult care. So I've always had remarkably good cranial and maxillofacial surgeons who I trust implicitly. I've had the same surgeon now since I moved from Great Ormond Street to Chelsea, Westminster, and we're really good mates, and I have this hard and fast rule that if you're going to cut my face open on a regular, I should at least like you. So there's no cure, because it's genetic. And so you go in and have what they call debulking surgeries, where they try and remove as much of the tissue as they can without being too heroic, because you end up with what we call the law of diminishing returns. And with any kind of surgery, be it kind of plastic or cosmetic, there's always a trade-off. You're always going to lose something. There's no sort of easy win. if you will. And because in my case I have what they call plexiform fibromas, where they're also wrapped around like bone, muscle, and nerve tissue. So going all in would quite literally kill me. So you just have to keep an eye on it, and the condition's progressive as well, so it's always going to keep on kind of coming and going. And so now I think I'm up to 39 surgeries, with 40 very much on the horizon. I used to make a really crass joke that I'd have a party after the 40th, and now it's imminent. I think I'm actually going to pull the trigger and do it, because it seems just macabre enough for me to do and pull off, but not that macabre where I'll get cancelled. So it's a fine line to walk. When you're in primary school, you're that young where your life is just literally swings and roundabouts. And because the condition's progressive, I suppose everyone sort of got used to me. And I had this plan where if I became nerdy enough, I'd give everyone too many options to bully me, and they'd all argue amongst themselves why they didn't like me, and eventually turn on each other, and I could just stand there and watch the chaos. And if I could go back again, I'd probably do it really differently. I reckon I'd just give my younger self a bit of a talking to, and be like, dude, grow up. You don't need to clap back like you're clapping back. And this shall pass, and one day they'll all know that you were right and they were wrong. So I fell in love with TV at a very young age. One of my father's friends worked at the BBC. So when I was 8 or 9, I went to go and see Live and Kicking being filmed live. And it was like back in like the first run of Live and Kicking, when it was Andy Peters, Emma Forbes, and John Barrowman, with Trevor and Simon dressed up like garden gnomes, reviewing music videos every week, and just the like sheer busyness and the electricity in the room, and just the nuts and bolts of TV is utterly fascinating to someone who grew up like verging on addicted to the medium, just how it all works and comes together. But live TV is a whole different animal to watch happen. Same with as live. I'll talk about the Baftas a bit later, and I was like, yeah, cool, this is what I want to do. But equally, I knew it was super competitive, even if we removed the disability component. So plan B had to be good. So I just went away, studied business and economics at GCSE, A-level and degree level, so that I could be as employable as possible and set myself up in a good way. I think having the degree, certainly then, mattered. So I applied to work at Six Music originally, on what was then BBC Extend, where they recruited solely for disabled candidates. And normally I'm not a big fan of disability schemes, because I think they create more problems than they solve. Well, they certainly used to, because it would just create like a revolving door of disabled people in entry-level positions. TV's still a little bit more nepotistic than it needs to be, and you need to know the right people or get in front of the right people. And if you're not sort of that person, if you're a little bit more shy and retiring and don't do what I did and email every single channel head and every single genre head in your first week asking for coffee, like what do you do? Your only other option is the elevator pitch, and the BBC's that big an industry that just might not happen. So yeah, I did that. I didn't get the Six Music job. I came second, which at this point I developed a real habit of doing. I think I got more. At one point, I reckon I had more silver than the Bank of England. I'd come second that many times in job interviews. And then you get the email, don't you, saying, "Oh, we really like you. We'll keep the record." And you roll your eyes and go, "Yeah. Who your assistant's copy and paste sent me this email." And I got a phone call saying that I had a job come up in commissioning management, and was I interested? And I was like, oh, yeah, sounds interesting. Thinking they'd say, oh, yeah, we'll send you the application form, fill it in, and we'll see where this goes. And they're like, oh, yeah, great, you're introduced tomorrow at midday. And I was like, oh, well, no prep time there, boom. And then went there, nailed it, got it. So I was the assistant to the executive editor of diversity and inclusion in BBC commissioning, which was the exact right person for me to work for at that time in my fledgling career. And then one day I came in late, and I think I was also like lethally hungover, in like a Marvel superhero t-shirt that was a size too big, because a friend of mine had bought it for me from Los Angeles. Had a random chat with a random guy in a lift. Apparently impressed him. Find out 2 days later, Danny Cohen, and then that got me 2 weeks work experience, which became a month, which became 2 months, which then became like five years.
Hi, and welcome to Deep.
We love making videos, meeting people and letting them tell their stories.
We really hope you're enjoying the channel, and if you are and would like a bit more,
We've just launched the series as a podcast on Spotify.
It's the full interviews uncut, so you can hear the whole thing, wherever you are, at home or on the go.
But no matter where you're watching the content, please remember to like, comment and subscribe, as it really helps the channel.
And don't forget to drop a comment below and tell us who you'd like us to talk to next.
Thank you. Now, back to our story.
Okay, cool.
We developed Beauty and the Beast, The Ugly Face of Prejudice, which ran for 2 seasons on Channel 4. And I was like a strand presenter in the first series of that, which was never a plan. And he just said, would I like to do it? And I was like, yeah, go on. And anything to support the company, you and the format, I'm all in. It was never like a desire to have an on-screen career. It was just me honouring their faith in me and returning the favour. And then that led to the Undateables. I worked on that on and off. I wasn't like solidly on it. I was like, I'd go in and like almost troubleshoot. If they were like struggling to find good people, I'd be like, look at where where are we looking, what are we doing, who are we talking to? I think I cast a few people in the early days from like my personal phone book. We always had very good safeguarding in place. We had like psych assessments. Once people had been like greenlit by the execs at Channel 4, once Lucy Laduga had said yes, we were like, okay, cool, let's have them meet Dr. Howie and make sure that they're robust enough to handle the fallout of being on TV. I wanted to move it away from the old sort of like shock doc pattern that we'd fallen into. The sort of like slow violin music and like this unnecessarily grandiose VO kind of Jimmy was born with a shark for a leg. Here's how Jimmy's sad about it. And so to remove from that to almost normalise it, but also just get people used to saying the word disability, which is still a challenge now in 2025, was a real thing. And now I think we've gone from there. Things like The Ugly Face of Prejudice, Undateables, I Am Spasticus was also huge in moving that forward. We're now at a stage where it's just beautifully woven into existing formats, such as like The Last Leg, First Dates, The Traitors, where the disability isn't the raison d'etre for the programme, and it's just all incidental and a regular part of the show, just like disability and disabled people are a regular part of multicultural British society. And when you have a title that's sort of deliberately poking the bear, which is such a Channel 4 thing to do, you then have like people on like forums like Media Watch and Twitter going, you can't call disabled people undateable. I'm like, we're not. The only one that said they're undateable is you in this tweet. So by all means, let's talk about this. Absolutely. Anything that starts a conversation, as long as it's all done with a tone of like love, respect, and willingness to learn, I'm all for. I was casting Series 2 of The Undateables at the time, and I get an email from Changing Faces, who are the UK's largest charity that support people with disfigurements and visual differences, saying, hey, this casting director's been in touch. They're casting the new Jonathan Glazer film. They want a guy with a disfigurement. If you fancy it, let them know. And I read the name Jonathan Glazer, and in my degree I've written papers on his work in advertising, because I think he's an advertising genius. Like, he did the old Guinness adverts with the horses and the surfers. He did the Levi Jeans advert where the people run through the walls. All his adverts break every single rule of marketing in that they're way too long, way too expensive, and you only see the product for the last 2 seconds of the advert. Yeah, they're always remarkably successful. So I was just like, yeah, cool, let's waste someone's time. Kind of signed up, went through all the steps, tried to make it stop, because it all got way too serious way too quickly, so for my liking. And then went to one final meeting. On the way to that meeting at the American Church on Tottenham Court Road, which is bang opposite where Betty used to be, I had literally had to cross one road, got hit by a black cab and broke my leg. Call him and hey, funny story, been hit by a cab, I think my leg's broken, still really keen. Don't think I'm not keen, I'm just going to be 10 minutes late. And hang up, call my mum, be like, yeah, broken my leg, see you at UCL. To which she replied, yeah, it was always going to happen. And then he turns up at the scene of the crime, where I'm now just in my underwear under a cab, high as giraffe ass on morphine. And apparently, because again, morphine, this is how the story's been relayed to me by colleagues that were there. He said, bloody hell, Adam, I didn't realise you did your own stunt work. To which I reply, bro, do I look like I've got a stunt double? And then next thing you know, I'm in Glasgow with Scarlett Johansson, working on Under the Skin, a film I thought would be in cinemas for 2 weeks and would never darken my door again. And it's become this iconic cult film. And I've always been a proponent of, if you want to learn to do something well, get alongside people that are already doing it to that level and just bother them, just get in their way and learn via osmosis. And it's always been very nice. Everyone's always been really kind and patient with me and given me time to learn it. Because I had no training. My Juilliard was a van in Glasgow doing it for real. And I'm very much indebted to Scarlett Johansson and Jonathan Glazer for taking a chance on some punk kid in Croydon who was technically a day late to his audition. So it's about a guy called Edward, played by Sebastian Stan, who has the same condition I do. So he's in prosthetics, done by the fabulous Mike Marino, who also worked on The Penguin with Colin Farrell. And he gets this miracle cure and winds up looking like Sebastian Stan. And then finds out that his old neighbour is writing a play about his old life that he used to have. And he auditions for it, gets it. And then my character, Oswald, just comes in and just slowly hijacks his life. And it becomes this real dark fable about identity and who are we and what happens when you get everything you want and realise you don't want it, but it's way too late in the game to do anything about it. It's super dark. And it's an area that the writer-director Aaron Schimberg knows well, because he was born with a bilateral cleft and palate. So all 3 of his films, Go Down Death, Chained for Life, and A Different Man, sort of play with the idea of disability, representation, and as I said, stable logic. And historically, I've only ever played dark, broody, shy characters, but with a little bit of an edge to them. So to play someone bold and gregarious and get to show range and flex as an actor was nice and refreshing for me. But it also means that the audience and the critics now need to do something with me. Like, they can't just say, oh, that's how he is in real life. Because now I've shown enough range where you can't say that with everything. Either I'm playing myself in a different man, and you've underrated me for 10 years, or I've been playing myself for 10 years, and now you've got to give me my goddamn flowers. And I think the biggest compliment that this song has gotten was when we released Wider in New York. And we had a lot of representatives from various charities and organisations that are in the world of disability and visual difference, who after the film came up to me, Sebastian, and Aaron, and just said, thank you. I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel represented in a mainstream film for the first time in my life. And for me, that's the biggest compliment we can get. And I'm now getting kind of scripts for characters who aren't written as disabled or disfigured. I'm just getting in front of people now because I'm just damn good at what I do. So there was this tweet from someone. They released sort of like the seating plan, which isn't the real seating plan, by the way. It's a pure publicity shot. And I was sat next to Camila Cabello, the singer formerly in Fifth Harmony. And someone tweeted, oh my God, this is so scary. If I were Camila, I would not go. And I don't know why that wound me up so much. Maybe because like the Baftas were sort of like, for me, like a high point, like a real you've made it moment. So I just retweeted and went, well, luckily you're not Camila. And more importantly, you weren't invited. So take your ableist nonsense elsewhere, because I have precisely zero time for it. And I tagged the user in, because I'm a real accountability guy. I think the accountability should be as public as the disrespect. And I turned my phone on a little bit later, and I was like, oh, that's had 6 million views. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And then the user gives this like fake apology and like goes to ground, and I get accused of bullying and harassment, and I'm like, no, I gave them the attention that they thought they wanted. I think we have normalised being awful to people online and counting it as having a personality. And back in the day, if you wanted to be mean to me, you'd have to come find me in the playground, say it to my face, and watch my soul die behind my eyes. And you feel this good old-fashioned emotion we called remorse and guilt. Whereas now you can write what you want online, send it, and you feel all-powerful. It's instantaneous and without consequence. And I almost want to put that old-school accountability back on the table. And be like, no, this has consequences. You can hide behind a keyboard all you want. But I'm where your nonsense comes to die cold, naked, and lonely. And if that means giving you the attention you think you want, and having you told off by enough people, where you start to rethink some of your choices, then, you know, so be it. I mean, obviously, if people are sending sort of like death threats and are telling people to gonna kill themselves, that's equally repugnant and unacceptable. But yeah, you know, there's a line in the sand here, isn't there? And I think the more we can teach people media literacy and social media literacy, that, you know, the internet's serious business, the internet's forever, and actions have consequences. And yeah, those corners of the internet can be quite like dark and problematic. And as someone who sort of like is in what we call the IWC, the internet wrestling community, like 95% of it is lovely, but that 5% make more noise than the 95%. And it just creates a toxic environment that I loathe. stop using the word risk. Disabled actors aren't risks. I'm not a risk, I'm an asset. Can disabled actors physically get in the room? And I know I call them out a lot, but like Spotlight is the most inaccessible building in Leicester Square. I don't think they have a lift. I think it's lift doors in front of a wall, because it's never working when I go there. Like if you've got to carry an actor in a wheelchair up 3 flights of stairs to audition, you've already set them up for fail. You've let them down before they've even started the audition. And I know actors who that's happened to, or they've had to audition in the Cafe Nero round the corner because the building isn't fit for purpose. But also, disabled people are people. We're more than just our disabilities. We're husbands, we're wives, we're sons, we're daughters, we're lovers, we're loathers, we're nerds. Like we're everything. I always say my disability is the least interesting thing about me. Don't get me wrong, still pretty damn interesting, but the least interesting thing about me. Frankie Boyle put it really well many, many years ago now. I saw him being interviewed by Richard Osmond at Edinburgh TV Festival. And he said that there's a layer of people in TV whose sole job it is to not take risks. And unfortunately that layer is called commissioning. But slowly but surely those commissioners are like dropping off and are being replaced with real risk takers.